Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Mind Your Fucking Business with your host, Jeffrey Preston.
Thank you, Dougie Sticks.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening to us from. Welcome to the Mind Your Fucking Business podcast, episode number 25. That is 25 on the Spanish dial for our Spanish listeners. And we're coming to you, as always, from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in Bergen County, New Jersey.
Thank you.
Where, once again, this morning, there is more white stuff on the ground.
It hasn't stopped for like 4 days.
I was joking last night with Jess. I'm like, when did we move to Edmonton? Because it's every single day.
Yes.
But not awful this morning getting into the studio. Thanks for joining us on the program as always. We always appreciate it wherever you're listening to us, whether that be Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, or some other outlets out there that have us. You can always find us. And as we always say, you can always send your emails to mypbshow@gmail.com. And as I promised you last week, we are going to answer some of those hockey emails today. It is on the NHL list. We have some questions that came in over the week. I'm going to answer them to the best of my ability.
Which I'm sure will be great.
I'm sure it'll be good. Let's not go great yet.
The best of your ability is going to be great.
Okay.
If you just like kind of tried, it'd be good. But if you're doing best of your ability, it's going to be great.
Okay. Man, you are like a ringing endorsement. And it made me think of a conversation we had in the studio here beforehand, which I will not bring up on the air today. But thank you. I appreciate your ringing endorsement for that. How was your Super Bowl, sir?
Are we going to get into it? Because, I mean, it was fine. It was a good day. Was it the best game to watch? I'm sure we're going to get into that at some point, right?
We're going to lead with it because what we're going to do, we're going to try and put a wrap on football. And then we're going to shift to hockey. We have a guest coming on today in the second half of the show. So we'll bring him on. He's been here before. Mm-hmm. And then probably for the foreseeable future, we're going to become a very mostly hockey podcast. Like we are supposed to be with the Mind Your Fucking Business name. So we'll try and put a wrap on football. And I think really where we should start, and we'll announce the winner of our contest in a minute. But I think where we should start is giving a lot of props to our guest last week, and that being Jeff Sheesby, the old man who bets, who we brought him on the show last week on the Super Bowl preview show. And I said to you, Jeff, what do you like for the Super Bowl? What's your thoughts? And instantly, he didn't have any hesitation. He was all about Tom Brady getting points and said, I'm not betting against Tom Brady on home field in a Super Bowl. And man, was he right, because as you said, it was not very much of a good game to watch unless you had betting interest, which we can discuss a little bit in a minute. Mm-hmm. But it was not the world's most exciting game, and it ended with a 31-9 win for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Tom Brady, who is not a favorite on the program, as we know, sometimes we do some Jet stuff. So Tom Brady, I would say, is not on our Christmas card list. At least he's not on mine. I don't want to speak for you, Dougie Sticks. But, it's his seventh title, a million other things. Like, he's the first guy to do it on multiple teams over 40. A million things. I mean, he is seriously the greatest of all time. We can hate him, but we hate him because he's good. But we certainly respect him. So congratulations to him and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, with the game, let's get into why Jeff Sheesby was right last week. Jeff Sheesby also said, and he was 100% correct on this, that there were some injury concerns with the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Particularly the offensive line. If you watch this game, and I'm going to assume if you listen to this, you did, because it was the Super Bowl. I don't think the Paw Patrol marathon was on for you, Dougie Sticks.
Nope.
You would see that those injuries crushed Mahomes in the sense that he was always on the run. It seemed like he was running 15 yards backwards a lot to get out of the way, and that made a big difference. And give Todd Bowles, former Jets coach, who was not very successful here, who is now the defensive coordinator down in Tampa Bay, a lot of credit because he consistently pressured Patrick Mahomes. got to him, and then also refused to have what happened to him happen in November when those two teams played, which was Tyreek Hill torching them. Tyreek Hill did nothing. If you watched the game, you saw they had the defense set back to protect them against the deep ball. And the combination of taking that away plus the pressure on Mahomes, the Kansas City offense resulted in 3 field goals. That was it. Never even got a touchdown. So give the Tampa Bay Buccaneers an enormous amount of credit. We congratulate them. So any bets for you? Did you make any bets? Because I want to tell you a betting story I had over the weekend.
I didn't make any bets, but I didn't bet on the game being that awful.
That you didn't do.
Yeah, I did not do it. I mean, it was supposed to be the greatest Super Bowl of all time.
Well, it certainly was not. Look, there are some Super Bowls that live up to the hype, particularly one 30 years ago that I was actually at. I was at Super Bowl 25 in Tampa, the famous one with the Giants and the Bills when the field goal went wide right, Scott Norwood, and the Giants won. And I watched actually yesterday because I was homeschooling yesterday. And I took a break during my homeschooling and I put on ESPN. And there was a fascinating story of that Super Bowl 30 years ago, the Whitney Houston national anthem. The U.S. had just invaded Iraq but 9 days prior. So, it was like hot thing, hot topic. And the Whitney Houston national anthem game, that was a great Super Bowl. Obviously, I could think of some overtime ones as well. I could think of the Patriots coming back against the Falcons a couple years ago was a great one. My senior year in Boston in 2002, the Patriots' first Super Bowl when they came back and beat the Rams on an Adam Vinatieri long field goal. There have been some good Super Bowls. This was not one of them.
Helmet catch game.
Yes, how could I forget?
Game.
Right. How could I forget that? Or when the Giants won in 2008 with the Plaxico Burress touchdown with about 30 seconds left in the left corner of the end zone. Yes, plenty of things we could talk about. But this game will not be remembered. Super Bowl 55 will not be remembered for being very exciting. Now, one thing that we did to make, and I don't know if this is good parenting or not. It's probably errs on the side of not good parenting, but I'll tell the story.
Please.
On Sunday, I had let my kids decide on a couple bets to make on the game via DraftKings. So I had said to them, you can pick heads or tails, right? Which is the worst bet you could do because you think about it, you have a 50-50 shot, but you're not getting 50-50 odds. It's the worst bet you could do.
What are the odds?
It's like minus 114. So you're paying $11.40 to win $10, right? It's how they make their money. It should be 50-50, you would think. It's got to be heads or tails.
Yeah,
but
red or black, man.
Right. Or the 2 green zeros, which always seem to happen when I play roulette. So we let our kids bet on the game. They picked heads. They won. So then I was looking through the props to make bets for me, and I found a prop that I figured my kids would like, and that was the color of the Gatorade that was going to be poured on the coach of the winning coach, right? Now, my kids, which was amazing because they never agree on anything, agreed to take the blue Gatorade. Now, the odds were not good. They think it's going to be yellow, just so you know, for your betting purposes. And they really think the long shot odds are purple. But blue was not a favorite. But they wanted blue, and I said, all right, we'll do that. Do you have any idea what color Gatorade dropped?
If I remember correctly, it was like dark red.
No, it was blue.
It was blue?
It was blue.
Hell yeah.
My kids, give them credit, went 2 for 2 with betting, way better than me or any of the other bets that was housed on my account for other people, did get the blue Gatorade right. So they did get that one right.
Maybe we should have them pick the weekly picks.
You know what? Maybe next year we'll have them pick a game a week. But we did have a winning week, and I did say last week Tampa, as did Jeff Sheesby.
Yes.
So at least we ended the year on a high note, right?
Yes. Well, we ended the whole. We had a winning season.
Right.
We had one off playoff week.
Yes, we had one off.
And we won the Super Bowl. Sounds like a great year to me.
It did. At the end of the day, I think the way that we will gauge ourselves is if you had listened to us from week 1 and made all the bets we told you, there were some winners, there were some losers, but there were far more winners than losers. You can take that money and, go away somewhere. We made you money. We paid for your summer vacation, which may not be a vacation this year.
Loans.
Or your college loans, whatever you want, or blue Gatorade at the store, whatever you want. So we ran a contest here on the podcast, and we thank everybody for entering. And we said you had to guess for a $50 Amazon gift card. Big money, yes. Thank you to the bigwigs of Undefeated Media for sponsoring that. We ran a contest. We said you got to pick the winner, and you got to pick the score. So we were having, I would say, a pretty good response going into Sunday morning. Now, are you aware what happened? I never even spoke to you. Do you see the entries when they come in? Have you seen that?
I didn't see all the entries. I know there were a bunch of entries.
Okay, all right. I
didn't read them all.
Okay, I don't expect you to. So Sunday morning, well, I know you're aware of this. An Instagram page for the Los Angeles Chargers that is a pretty large following posted about our contest. And I would say that
blown up.
that escalated the guesses a lot. I would say that yes. A part of me felt bad in a way because there were a lot of people that entered that I knew, that I personally knew, that I was like, oh, it would be cool if they win. And then when I saw them come in from these other, I'm like, yeah, you know what? The odds of winning just went down for people. So we congratulate Chuck in Chula Vista, California.
Chuck.
Now, Chuck had Tampa Bay winning.
Yeah.
But he had Tampa Bay winning 28-10, which was not that far off. Now, I will say that I'm going to make fun of myself here, and I'm going to be honest, that when I saw that entry, because I was looking through them a little bit Sundays they came on, I was like, yeah, right. Like, dude, I mean, I think Tampa's going to win. They're not going to win by 18, but they ended up winning by 22.
Yeah.
So we congratulate Chuck in Chula Vista, California, who was emailed yesterday an Amazon gift card for $50. Thankfully now, and I was not aware of this because I'm behind on the tech world. As you know, when I come into the studio and I look at all the fancy things in here, that you can now email gift cards of Amazon. I figured we were going to have to send it in the mail.
Postage and everything. We just saved some money.
Yes. So thank you, Chuck, for joining. Thank you, everyone else, for joining. We will do it again next year. Yeah. And next year we'll save the bigwigs of Undefeated Media some money, and we'll have one of our sponsors.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do some squares too or something.
Yes.
Maybe we'll even go live during the Super Bowl. Who knows? Might get fancy.
And maybe we can pour like a certain color Gatorade on my kid's head next year to see if
they're right, they get saved. If they're wrong, we douse them with Gatorade.
I'm fine with that. So that's a wrap on the Super Bowl. Again, we congratulate the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on winning Super Bowl 55. A couple other football notes. We will talk football in the offseason a little bit. Football is a weird sport where now, free agency is not like hockey or baseball or basketball. There's not as much offseason stuff. There is some, and it will start with the draft, but there is probably a trade coming up in the next couple days. It sounds like with Carson Wentz, the Philadelphia quarterback, which will be interesting. And it sounds like the most logical landing spot is Chicago Bears for him. We'll see if that's where he goes. But the fascinating one, particularly in the New York area, is Deshawn Watson, who has clearly wants out of Houston. He's got a no trade clause, so he can actually veto any trade. And on top of that, he has made it clear that his two preferable teams are either the Miami Dolphins or the New York Jets. And the New York Jets certainly have the assets to get him. Whether they're worth it is another discussion, but they would be able to do it if they want, as they do own the number 2 pick in this draft. Plus, they have a lot of draft picks coming up in the next couple years, and they have salary cap room. So the Jets are a logical spot. If I am Deshaun Watson, I would want to come to the Jets. Why? You're getting that New York endorsement money. Yep. You're in the New York spotlight, and the Jets are so bad that if you won 8 games next year, right? If you won 8 games next year, you're going to be known as having a good season.
Yeah. And believe it or not, a lot of sources, Adam Schefter says that a lot of people are going after Sam Donald right now. They're looking to trade. They're looking to trade and get Sam,
which I find interesting. Surprising, which I think is your reaction too. And especially because, as we talked about with Jeff Sheesby last week, if you look at what the price tag was for Matthew Stafford, it brought back multiple first-round picks and a younger quarterback. I mean, look, Sam Darnold, I mean, the jury's still out if he's going to be good or not, but he would be worth something if you're looking at the market price. So maybe one of these teams, Indianapolis Colts, is a team that I keep hearing mentioned in Sam Darnold. Maybe they want to take a chance on him. And if you do that, if you trade Sam Darnold, right, you then have the opportunity to either at number 2 keep your draft pick and draft probably the kid out of Utah or Justin Fields in Ohio State, or you can trade for Deshawn Watson. So the Jets have plenty of options here next year with your quarterback. It's either going to be Sam Darnold, Deshawn Watson, or whoever they draft at number 2.
The Stafford trade really screwed the Jets. Because if they just kept it Stafford for Goff, I honestly feel like you could get away with Sam for Watson.
Yeah,
maybe one more pick, maybe like a 3rd round pick or something. But now they have to give him the whole team.
They've got to give him, it didn't help the market, but it could work in their favor on the other end, where if you're trading Sam Darnold and the market's been driven up for the quarterback, you're now the seller on Sam Darnold. So who knows about that? We'll see. So we'll keep you posted here on the NFL trade action. The draft will be in April. Should be a good draft class, very quarterback heavy in the first round. So you would expect to see a lot of movement, because some teams that are up there, if you look at the top 10, do not need quarterbacks, and there will be teams trying to move up to get said quarterback. So there will be a lot of movement this year. We'll keep you posted on the NFL offseason with that. So we thank you for joining the contest. Congratulations again to Chuck in Chula Vista. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, California, for the winning pick of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 28-10. Now, on to hockey. And we're going to bring on our guest in a couple minutes to talk Rangers, but let's just talk some general NHL stuff, because one of them was some of the questions that I promised I would get to today. The 2 questions that I got are actually, ironically, the 2 topics I would have brought up here anyway. And one is this COVID mess of a situation with the New Jersey Devils. So to recap, the Devils played up in Buffalo, not this past weekend, a week and a half ago. They had 2 matinee games, a 1:00 game last Saturday and Sunday. The Devils then added over 10 players to the COVID list, canceled all their games last week. The Devils were scheduled to resume. As of yesterday, they were going to resume on Thursday in Philadelphia. That has now been canceled, their weekend series with the Flyers. And it also canceled their Monday game with Boston. So the Devils situation just gets worse. I don't here's the thing with the NHL, and I'm not getting on them for not releasing information, medical records. That's not what we're doing here. But you have to keep in mind, when someone's on a COVID protocol list, Dougie, that does not mean you have COVID. That means either, yes, you have COVID, or you've been in close contact with someone who does. So do I think that all 17 players on the Devils have COVID? No, because I think if they did, the Devils would be shut for a longer time. But there's clearly something going on. Yesterday, the NHL announced that the 2 linesmen that worked those games up in Buffalo have now been added to the protocol list. So if you follow the clues or lack of clues, you can still tell that something went on in that weekend series. The Buffalo Sabres coach has now tested positive, Ralph Kruger. So clearly this is all stemming from the Devils' visit to Buffalo. So we hope that the Devils come back soon. The league is having to reschedule games now at a feverish pace. Right now, the Devils' first game back, if it's not changed, is a week from today at Madison Square Garden versus the New York Rangers. So we will see if that is what comes to fruition. We hope it is. And the NHL has done a really good job bouncing through the schedule.
Do they have those detector thingies?
Oh, the other sports?
Like the NFL had like these like watches that traced like who you were next to, kind of thing.
I don't think so. I think it would be really hard in hockey. Now, what the NHL did, I mean, I don't think this makes a difference, right? If you watch games, which I know being the hockey fan that you do every night on your NHL ticket on your TV, you see that players are still drinking out of the green Gatorade bottles on the bench. So they're not doing everything to curtail any sort of spread. What they did last week, which I don't understand. I mean, I get it, but I don't think it's really going to help. They took the boards behind the little glass piece behind the player's bench and removed it, thinking that it would help airflow behind the bench. But it's hard to believe that is going to really be a massive help.
They're going to get some raging fans doing some stupid stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. We had Dan Rosen on a couple of weeks ago from the NHL Network, and he had said, look, the NHL is prepared for issues, and they built in a couple days buffer between the end of the season and the playoffs. At this rate, they're going to need more than that. Yeah. They're going to have to, if every team is going to play the 56 games that they are supposed to play, which they're probably going to have to for playoff implications, you're going to have to be starting the playoffs a little bit later. 100% on that. So the other question we got, which is funny because there was a development on this last night. last week, the Winnipeg Jets and the Columbus Blue Jackets really traded superstars with Patrick Laine going from Winnipeg to Columbus. And I always pronounce the guy's name wrong on Columbus, Pierre Leclerc, whatever, going up to Winnipeg. This trade was done really because John Tortorella, the coach in Columbus, could not stand Leclerc, and they didn't get along. It was a public thing, and they traded him. So people had said, boy, if I'm Patrick Laine, yeah, you're happy to be out of Winnipeg, but now you're playing for probably the most non-players coach in the league, and you're in Columbus. You're not going to get a lot of exposure there. So we had a question come in on Friday or Saturday. It was one of the days recently. They all mixed together in the world that we live in, where they said, well, how do you think the relationship with those two are going to work out? And I would have come on the show and I said, this is probably not going to work out. So let's go back 15 hours ago last night in the Columbus game. Yeah. And John Tortorella benched Patrick Laine for half the game. And already there's issues. Wow. So this is going to be a really interesting situation because now if you're and I like John Tortorella, he was the coach of the Rangers. He got them to the Eastern Conference Finals and won the President's Trophy with them in 2012. He's a good coach, but he just does not communicate well with players. So now if you're the Columbus Blue Jackets and say the situation gets worse, which it probably is, this is a bad start. You've now had this guy really rip through your two best players in a matter of a season. It may be time for a new voice in the locker room. Yeah. What do you think, Dougie Sticks?
I mean, if he's benching all my best players, I'm spending lots of money for.
Mm-hmm. And Patrick Laine, if I'm not mistaken, his contract is up at the end of the year. So if he doesn't return to Columbus and you keep that coach who he's not getting along with, that trade looks terrible. Yeah. Because you also sent up to Winnipeg in that trade a draft pick. So that is that story. And we are going to shift now to some New York Ranger focus. Before we do that, I said this last week, and unfortunately it hasn't gotten better, that the New York Rangers are very newsworthy in the beginning of the year. There's just too much stuff going on. They're conversation worthy. If you put on the hockey in the NHL Network and you watch these shows, the analysts are always talking about situations with the Rangers, and it's not a good thing. You don't want to be in the news. But we're going to bring in, and we're going to see if he's there, and that's Cliff Corral, our friend at Cliffhanger Sports. There he is. How are you, Cliff?
How you doing, guys? Good.
Good to see you. So we're going to bring Cliff in because Cliff gives a really good perspective on the New York Rangers as well. And sometimes it's good to have another voice other than me and Dougie Sticks. So how are you? How's it going?
Very well. Just putting the man cave together. I just moved last weekend, so it's partially done, but it'll be up and running in a couple of days. So
very cool. Are you still in the city?
I moved to Jersey City, so right across the river. Still only 12-minute train ride to the Garden, so I'm in good shape.
Well, we will see you there when hockey returns, hopefully.
Exactly.
So, as I said, the Rangers have had a lot of issues already in the news, and let's start really with probably the biggest one, which is the Tony DeAngelo situation. Last week we had said that we didn't know which way they were going to go. And it seems to be, and I don't know if it's false reporting, that teams are interested in Tony DeAngelo, and the Rangers, if they could somehow get Sam Bennett from Calgary, would be amazing. I'm not sure how Jeff Gordon pulls that off. What is your prediction here? Is some team going to take a chance here on Tony DeAngelo in that contract?
I think so. There's rumors that both teams on the West Coast, the Kings and the Ducks, are also interested. So it looks like he will get moved. I think the Rangers will probably have to eat some of his salary. In the NHL, you're only allowed to keep up to 50% of salary. So, he's got a $5 million cap hit, I believe, something along those lines. So there's talk that the Rangers might have to eat, $1 million, $2 million or change to make a move. But as you mentioned, if you could do that trade with Calgary, that would be a win-win for both teams. The Rangers are desperately in need of a center, and it seems like Tony's played his last game in New York. So even though he was a great offensive talent from the blue line, it does give us a chance to bring up some of our younger guys. Obviously, Miller made the team out of camp, and now you're seeing Hayek playing a little bit more. We have a couple other blue chip defensemen that we might see by the end of the season. So. Rangers' biggest need is a center, so I think if they're going to find the perfect partner, hopefully it'll be somebody that's willing to give up a center. And as you mentioned, the Calgary center is he's fallen out of favor there as well. So it could be a change of scenery trade for both guys. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what's frustrating, and I guess it doesn't really matter because we don't own the Rangers, but it's such a horrible look. I mean, the Rangers just re-signed this guy 3 months ago to a 2-year contract that they really, I had said was a lot of money at the time for a guy that really had a good year in a contract year. And now, after 3 games, he's out because he fought the goalie. So it's a horrible look on the organization who literally just re-signed him. I mean, 3 months ago, and this has already happened. So let's move on to another issue with the Rangers, and it's becoming a bigger issue every game. And again, even last night I'm watching it, and it's becoming an issue, is Zibanejad. I don't know what is going on with Mika Zibanejad right now. He's got 1 goal on the year. He is not short of chances, though. He had kind of a 2-on-1 breakaway last night in the third, couldn't finish. He's had a couple chances. The game on Thursday versus the Caps, he had an open net and hit it right into the side of the goalie's pad. He's just not finishing. Now, Mika also had COVID about a month ago. So do you think that COVID is playing into this, and should we be worried?
No, I don't think it's a health thing. I think right now it seems to be more of a confidence thing. As you mentioned, he's getting his chances. And the funny thing about Mika is you look, and I was all over Instagram with pumping up Mika because they always come out with the top 20 centers list in the NHL. And Mika's always in that 15 to 20 range on some lists, and some lists didn't even make the list. So I've been pretty vocal. Like, the guy led the league in goals per game last year. And how is he not a top 20 center? But a lot of what people pointed out on Instagram, and I did follow up and did some research, I think he had the highest shooting percentage of any player in the NHL last year. So while he did lead the league in goals per game, he was scoring at a ridiculous pace, like 20-something% of his shots on goal were goals. So if you look, historically, somewhere in the 10 to 12 range is superstar talent, and high single digits is probably more the norm. So I didn't think he was going to come back and create, as many scoring chances as he did last year, just because it's impossible to keep that percentage going. But I think after the first few games where he was almost invisible, then he started, taking more shots on goal, being more visible in the game. And he's been stonewalled, like you said, even last night. He couldn't finish on a 2-on-1.
Right.
I think what's going to happen is he's going to, you have to break the ice, and once he breaks the ice, I think he's always been a streaky player, but this has been a pretty miserable start. So I think he'll get back on track.
So go ahead, Doug.
Do we think that's because of all the line shifts and all the changing of the personnel and where people are playing? Do you think that's
they really haven't changed his line too much. I mean, they did after I think the second or third game, they broke up the top line. But, if you look at the last few games, it's been the Kreider, Booch, Mika line. They did try Laffy up there for a while, and they had some times with Panarin and Zibanejad on the ice at the same time, which he hasn't done in the past. And I think it was really just trying to shake it up and generate some scoring opportunities. Seems like he's getting back to more of a regular line shift over the past. Quinn did take some criticism, over the last few games about switching people around too much, and I think he's settled into a more stable line.
So he is a streaky player. I get it, and there's got to be the pucks have to start going in. So I'm going to give you another name, and I hate to even ask you this question because it drives me nuts to even ask it. I don't want to be that guy, but I'm going to be that guy. Should we be concerned at all with Alexis Lafreniere? He's got 1 goal in 11 games. I know it's an enormously small sample size, and he's playing on a line with Ranger greats Brett Howden and Phil DiGiuseppe, so he's not really on a top line. I get it. He has shown some plays, some flashes. Like last night, he had a pass in the third period, which was outstanding, and he's getting chances around the net. He's just not finishing. I myself am not concerned right now, but I'm going to ask you, are you concerned at all?
No, not at all. And I think you saw with Capo last season, he got off to a very slow start, not only in scoring, but just in, puck possession, plus minus, he looked like a 19-year-old kid on the ice in the NHL last year. And I think, if you switch over to Jersey, who had the number 1 pick last year, and Hughes, he had a rough start to the season as well. And if you watched the Devils game against the Rangers a couple of weeks ago, where Hughes just lit it up, he looked fantastic, and he got another assist called back for I guess they were offsides or whatever the case may be, but there was a goal disallowed where I think he would have had 5 points that night against the Rangers. So, hey, look, these guys, the fact that they make the NHL right out of the draft, it's pretty rare. There's not too many 18, 19-year-old kids playing in the NHL right out of the draft. So, no, I'm not worried yet. And as you mentioned, there are flashes that you can see this kid's got the goods, and it's going to take some time. And also, as you mentioned, he is playing with Howden and DeSheppy. One of the biggest problems the Rangers have, which is a lot different than last year, is they're not scoring. Whereas last year they were scoring, but they were giving up a lot of goals. This year they seem to be playing, a little bit better 5-on-5 hockey in terms of not giving up odd man rushes and breaks, but they're not scoring as much as they were in the past. Part of that's Mika. The other big part of it, and this affects Laffy as well, is that Philip Hedl is hurt. And if you looked at the way Hedl started the season, he was probably the best forward on the ice for the first few games. And he is the third-line center. Argue he could be the second-line center, if he continues to progress. So Laffy not having, Hedl there with him, I think that will slow the development a little bit more. Because, as much as Howden has been talked about as a third or second-line center potentially, he really is a fourth-line center on the lineup as constituted now.
Yep. And that's also why I'm not concerned, because he's not playing with line mates who are really going to set him up in premium positions here. So on the bright side, I'm going to give you the name of the player on this team that I've been most impressed with so far. I'm going to give you 3 players that I think have done really well this year. And I'll leave the last one as the one I'm most impressed with. One is Adam Fox. He just continues to do great things on the blue line and make the pick with Carolina to give up a second-round pick for him look like an absolute steal. I do think Pavel Buchnevich has been more consistent this year. He seems to be around the net a lot more. He's getting chances every game. If some of them would go in, he would really be blown up. But he's done well. But the name that I am most impressed with is Keiondre Miller. He made a play last night in the third period, and I would have said this without this play in the third period, where Matt Barzal in a scoreless game is coming down the wing, and he absolutely made a perfect defensive play. He was in perfect positioning, stole the puck from him, didn't take a penalty, got the puck up ice quickly. Keiondre Miller seems to be a face that you and I will be watching at the Garden for many years to come.
Oh, I agree. And I had a feeling that he was going to make the team out of camp, and you could tell from the last few practices when Quinn had him on the ice with Truba. You had him, getting some power play time even in practice. So it was pretty evident that he was going to make the team out of camp, and he hasn't disappointed. And as you mentioned, Fox, was last year's superstar rookie, on the defensive end, and now you're adding a second one. You also have Anderson, you have Schneider, who they just drafted, who is projected to be a top 4 defenseman as well. So even though the Tony thing, is going to play out the way it does, and he's going to move on, I think it will accelerate bringing these young kids up. And a guy like Miller, like you said, he's here to stay. He's a big kid. He can move, and he can play defense, and he can, jump up in the play as well. So, with Fox and Miller as well, and then, and I mentioned a couple of the other names that we're going to see probably by the end of the season. We might see a couple more guys up on the back end. I think we're in good shape on the defensive end. And
I would agree with that. Last Ranger question before I get to an NFL question and let you go.
Yeah, sure.
Last Ranger question. Last week on the show, I was a little bit critical, and I know the Rangers have kind of righted the ship a little bit, but I'm still a little bit concerned on David Quinn. David Quinn was brought here primarily because he was a developer or known to be a developer of young talent, and which at the time in 2018 was, and still is to this day, what the Rangers need, because they are young and they have a lot of young kids. I am not seeing a lot of these young players really develop at the rate that they were supposed to, and that is his specialty, supposedly. Are you concerned at all with David Quinn being the right coach for this team?
I'm not. I believe in Quinn, and I think the players, respond well to him. At least, maybe not on the score sheet like you mentioned, but I think that there's good vibe in the locker room. The Tony D'Angelo thing was obviously a distraction. You don't see teammates fighting in the hallways too often. Especially on a team with a bunch of youngsters like we have. So I think we move past that. I think, like I mentioned earlier, the team is playing better 5-on-5 hockey, and I was a little concerned last year that the run and gun style, push the puck up the ice, was leaving us with too many odd man rushes, going the other way, and that's really a Quinn thing. That's a philosophical style that he has. They seem to have come to a point where they're playing much tighter games. They're out shooting their opponents in many of the games that they lose, and they've lost a lot of 1-goal games. So if you look at it, we're really not that far away from being 3-4 games above 500. So I would give it some time, and I think Quinn's earned the shot to keep going. So the other thing to think about is when we touched on this last time I was on with you guys. This division is a beast. I mean, you have Washington, you have Boston, you have Philly. Those three teams are going to make the playoffs. In any division that they played in this year, they were going to make the playoffs, and all three of them happen to be in our division. So you really have like 4 or 5 teams fighting for one spot, to make it. And you look at the range of schedule. You're playing Boston 8 or 9 times. You're playing Philly 8 or 9 times. You're playing Washington 8 or 9 times. So you do have kids, like you said, that are developing, but you're also playing against teams that are, 3 or 4 of the best teams in the league on a regular basis. So the fact that we haven't been getting blown out, and the fact that we're still close to 500 in a division that's probably the toughest division in the NHL, I would keep that all in mind. And also you have a couple of your stars, like we talked about earlier, that have not lit it up so far. So if Mika starts scoring, if Capo continues his progressions, and Panarin has a season like he's having already, continues that, I think that it'll turn, and I don't think it's time to panic. So that's my glass half full. Yeah.
Well, we like the optimism here. We definitely do. All right, last thing I will mention. I know you and I talked yesterday, and we got to give you some props that the last 7. So I guess it was the Super Bowl, the conference championships, and then the division round. You were 7-0 with your picks on the spread. Is that right?
That's correct. And when I came on with you last time, I was on fire. I was above. I think at one point I was, high 60s percentage on the season. And after I came on your show, I think that 2 or 3 weeks where I just got crushed, and not crushed, but I was, under 500. And then a similar thing happened in the playoffs. I was 1-3. In the AFC, in the wild card week, super wild card week, and I think a lot of people got hurt that week. That was a tough week to pick. But after that, I was 4-0, and I won with Tampa on Sunday. So it was again lucky sometimes, but it was a profitable couple of weeks for sure.
Well, there you go, and hopefully for you, when football starts back up in 6 months, or 6.5 months, not that we're counting the days already here. Hopefully that hot streak continues. So that is Cliffhanger Sports. Thank you for joining us as always. We'll put the Instagram handle up there for those watching online, and come back and see us again soon.
Anytime, guys. Great show, and thanks for the invite.
Thanks, Cliff. Take care. Stay safe.
Thanks, Cliff.
Thanks, guys.
So I think it is good that we get extra, additional Ranger perspective other than me. Because look, I think it's good. I think Cliff and I, and some of the things, like he's more of a fan of David Quinn right now than I am, which is good to hear because I certainly understand that argument. But we definitely did agree on a lot of things. So, and you too, firing in some hockey questions.
Yeah, man.
I was impressed.
I'm a fan. What jersey should I get? That's the next question because no one's really playing that great. So what jersey should I get? Here's a question for you.
One of these days, I think you're going to surprise everyone and show up in the studio in like a Mark Messier or Wayne Gretzky jersey. and people will just.
Those are easy picks.
Okay, so you know what? Find
you know what I mean? Like Gretzky, that's easy. That's an easy. Get a Gretzky jersey. I'm thinking like, should I get a Lafreniere jersey?
It wouldn't be a bad investment because you know he's going to be here 10 or 15 years. You don't, like the worst thing you could do when you buy any sports
jersey.
Right. The worst thing you could do when you buy a sports jersey is you buy the jersey and 3 weeks later that player's traded. I mean, that's
what's happened with my Sam Donald jersey. Got a Sam Donald jersey and he got mono the next day.
You are just a jinx, man. Please, you know what? Maybe
I should.
Yeah, you know what? Why don't you buy like another team's jersey so you don't
Who's the guy we're getting rid of? Who's fighting goalies?
Oh, Tony D'Angelo. Yeah,
maybe I should get his jersey.
Buy a number 77 jersey. So, well, we will miss football on this program, and I know we wrapped it up earlier today with the NFL, but we're going to shift now in the next couple of weeks to a little bit of a different content. Now that we don't have football, we certainly will keep hockey going. And again, you can email your questions at any time, and I told you I would get to him today, and I'll do it again next week if you send them. That is mypbshow@gmail.com. We do check that every day, and the sooner you give me time to prepare on the questions, not flying on the fly like last week, the better answers I can do. The great answers, right? Not the good.
We are live, though, so you can ask questions at any moment during the show, and we will answer them live.
And that did happen last week. So we thank you guys last week for the 2 questions we had coming in live out of the blue. So we're going to shift some content. We're going to become hockey focused, and we are going to start to try to incorporate some other areas of the podcast, as it's called Mind Your Puckin' Business, which is to focus on some businesses. We are going to highlight, as we talked about, I think in the first show back in August, one of the goals of the program was to highlight small businesses, particularly in light of everything going on in the world right now, and try and give them some PR, free publicity. I know some have looked into sponsorships, and we're going to look at promoting some businesses. So you may find some small businesses on the program in the next few weeks. That is the plan, and they probably will be focused like in this area, northern New Jersey, tri-state area. But if you are a business in other areas, you're welcome to come on.
So please reach out. And the email is
the email again, MYPB show.
But yeah, definitely
gmail.com.
reach out. Definitely reach out. We can either have you a guest, a sponsor,
whatever you want.
Word out.
Whatever you want, we can make it happen for you. Dreams come true here at Mind Your Puckin' Business.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Look at this. You know what I have found, and then we'll wrap it up. But I have found that a lot of people, I don't know if you probably know this better than me because you've done this a lot longer. A lot of people say to me, I should say a lot of people. That is misleading. I'd say a few have said to me over the last couple months, "Oh, I'd love to come on the show. I would be this sort of guest." And I'm like, "Yeah, it would be a great idea." And then like the day after, I'll get a text or 2 days. Yeah, you know what? I'm a little bit nervous. Not for me. I'm more of like the behind the camera guy. I'm like, all right. Well, so, you know what? The invitation's still open.
I do get this a lot, and what you need to realize is it's a muscle. What we're doing right here is a muscle, and the more you work it out, the easier it gets. We do vlog before doing the podcast. If we were doing vlogs, and we do a lot of video here at Undefeated Media, and at the beginning, turning the camera on, recording yourself feels a little weird, but as you do it more, it's a muscle, and it gets easier. So have no fear. We want you here. See, we did that, right?
Yeah, look at that.
Have no fear. We want you here. Don't worry about it. We're live. We're just hanging out, talking about business and sports, and we would love to have you.
Well, in that sense, you can reach out to us, and hopefully
MYPB show.
There you go. Well, thanks for tuning in, whether you heard us today on Facebook, iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, or anywhere else out there. We appreciate you listening. Tune in next week. We will definitely be talking some hockey stuff. Hopefully the COVID situation with the New Jersey Devils and some other teams in the league gets better. And I believe next week we do have a guest on. I believe the plan, if I'm not mistaken, from the big wigs at Undefeated Media is that we may be shifting to that small business focus next week.
Yeah, should we give him a shout out? It's a 50-50 shot, but we have a guest lined up, Rich Robinson, who trains all the high class private schools, Don Bosco, Bergen Catholic, and St. Joe's. He trains them all in various sports. So it's be interesting perspective.
Cool. Yeah, that would be cool. Especially as we're moving into the season. He's particularly lacrosse, right? Is that what?
Yep.
And lacrosse season is coming up in a couple months, hopefully with everything going on with Corona. So thanks for tuning in. That's a wrap for today. Tune in next week on the Mind Your Puckin' Business podcast. Thank you all for listening.